Thank you very much, DG and Program Director. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. Good afternoon, Honorable Deputy Minister, and the Honorable MECs, and the FAO country rep, and the HODs and DGs that are present here, and the representatives thereof, and ladies and gentlemen and colleagues that are present, good afternoon. I'm also going to present the findings of the survey, which was just highlighted earlier in terms of the background by Cesar. And I will skip this slide because it actually talks to the rest of the presentation and indicates that the survey was commissioned to the HSRC as indicated with the funding from the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development to actually establish the districts and communities that are food insecure. We have had several interventions as government wherein we realized that with all of those, we have never achieved what is called almost a zero hunger or no poverty level. And we were saying it means that there's something that we're not doing right. Hence we did this. And then the methodology was such that we used a combination of two methodologies where we combined the food security continuum as well as the household economy approach. And these are mandated actually by the SADC region. And the food security continuum actually measures a set of indicators to determine numbers of people that are food insecure using various categorizations. And it actually provides a food and nutrition security status quo at a point in time. And again, combining this with the household economy approach, which then analyzes the household's ability to cope with stresses that are causing them to be food insecure, we then were using the livelihood zones as demarcated by SADC, as well as indicating to say what are the wealth breakdowns for these communities, and again, what are their livelihood strategies? How do they manage when they have disasters? How do they cope with food and nutrition security when they are struck by a sudden disappointments due to various causes, including climate change? Now, the findings, quickly, we were able to realize that communities have access to land. Yes, but this was focusing on land for cropping. It excluded grazing land because normally that's communal land. It's difficult to measure who owns what. But in terms of access to land, we saw Eastern Cape leading there, with Western Cape having very limited access to land. But in terms of usage of such land, again, we were realizing that Limpopo was the lead in terms of utilizing land, and noting that only 14% of South African households were involved at the time in some sort of agricultural production. And I think this was also due to the challenges that we were just coming out of as far as COVID-19 was also concerned. And then the agricultural activities were more intensive in Limpopo and Mpumalanga at the time of the survey. And Limpopo was actually leading with agricultural production. With agricultural production in most commodities, with the exception of livestock and vegetables, which livestock was the leading, was seen to be leading in Eastern Cape. I was still saying that Limpopo was leading in the production of several commodities, with the exception of vegetables, which was led by Gauteng, as well as livestock, led by Eastern Cape. And in terms of unemployment, we are faced with a challenge as a country. Our unemployment figures are escalating, and particularly expanded unemployment, which is the people that are more discouraged. They are no longer even looking for jobs, which is a bigger challenge for the country. And this is more prominent in Eastern Cape, as well as some parts of Limpopo. Not to say that the other areas are excellent, but they are better off. But this becomes a challenge when it comes to youth in particular. And we also looked at the effects of social grants on these communities, as well as social relief of distress. As indicated, we worked with the Department of Health, the Department of Social Development, Department of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation, the DBE, as well as small business development departments when we were developing the indicators for this study, because we needed to match both food and security indicators as well as nutrition indicators because of their importance. And this was seen to be dominant. The social relief of distress was dominant in the Western Cape, with social grants dominating in the Eastern Cape, some parts of Free State as well as Limpopo, and a little bit of KZN there. And in terms of the household food security indicators, the household food insecurity access scale was used to measure. And here I would like to emphasize this, Honorable Minister, Honorable Minister and MECs, because people add these figures. They should not be added, because the household food insecurity access scale asks questions to communities, and those questions, based on the responses to those questions, then it's either you are mildly food insecure, you are moderately food insecure, and you are severely food insecure. But in this case, we have about 17.5% of our communities that are severely food insecure. So these figures should not be added, which was what was also happening when we had been launching in KwaZulu-Natal. People were just saying 70% of people there are food insecure, because they were adding the mildly, the moderate, and the severe. And that is not how it works. That's why there's a scale. It measures you and puts you where you are. So that is very important. Again, in terms of household hunger, we also have measures that we use there to measure the hunger. And again there, as a country, we don't have people that go to bed hungry. Then this is about 79.2% of those people. But about 15.3% of our households have moderate hunger. They eat a meal, but they cannot have all 3 meals. And then some of them that are severely hungry are about 5.6%. But this still should give us sleepless nights in terms of engagements as partners and a collective towards food and nutrition security. And in terms of the status of food insecurity by province, Limpopo had lesser severity on food security compared to Northwest, which was the highest severity on food security, and this has been a trend. Even the General Household Survey confirms this, and this is something that us as officials should be addressing based on these results as well. Now, looking at the dietary diversity score, here it's a plate. What is there on your plate? Is it a variety of foods that will also be nutritious, or you just eating to fill your stomach? We realized as well that the country was not doing badly, even though there are some provinces like Limpopo that are concentrating on filling the stomach with energy-dense food compared to eating well, which is something that we would want to continuously propagate, so that communities are knowing, and even when they eat the pap and nam, they know that this thing is not good for my health for me, and I should not be eating like this. But I think we will get there. And then coming to the food consumption score, the KZN had the highest food consumption score. The food consumption score is again dietary diversity, the variety of food. Where do you get it? How nutritious is it? So that is the score that gets measured there. And KwaZulu-Natal had scored very well in terms of that. And now coming to just the summary, generally there is food insecurity in most provinces, and there is severity in others like Northwest, as I've already said. And again, Northwest and Free State provinces had poor diets, and the lowest dietary diversity was more prevalent in Free State. And then coming to the nutrition indicators, these are our health issues. And you worry when you are not looking good, and because it affects your health. But in terms of prevalence of stunting, especially on children that are 0 to 5, and prevalence of wasting that are for children that are 0 to 5. The Western Cape and Northern Cape were affected mostly by stunting. And stunting is you are short for your age. And then there was another prevalence in the Northern Cape of wasting. And I think it's something that still can be addressed. And this one is you are thin, very thin for your age, because you are not well fed. It's malnutrition. These are indicators of malnutrition. And then continuing with the nutrition indicators, I have already spoken to this, but there's also a need to measure against the national average. The Western Cape was at 25.7 when it comes to stunting, whereas the national average is about 14.8%, which is something that we will work towards as we are doing planning and targeting. And then the highest prevalence of wasting in Northern Cape being at 19%, and the national average being 3.2%. That shows that there is a challenge there in our province of the Northern Cape, with KZN experiencing challenges of obesity, which was quite high at 39.4%, with the country average of 32.1%. But then this indicates that as a country we have obesity. We have a challenge of overweight up to obesity, which is a challenge and that we need to address. But as I'm going towards closure, I wanted to also share this slide of anthropometric measurements to show that these nutrition indicators are actually a thorn for females more so than men. And you can see the graph on obese, that 41.3% of women are obese compared to about 15.3% of men. So I think, ladies, we are I must say I'm very conscious about what I eat. So it's important. Thank you, Program Director. But as I go towards conclusion, these are then the districts that are problematic. If we look at Eastern Cape, we have also shared this with the colleagues in terms of the CASP direction, the Presidential Employment Stimulus support, Ilimali support. We have said that these are the districts that are your problem districts based on the survey. Even if you are going to still support other districts, but please focus on this, and then we can look at the next phase to say how did we fare. I will not waste a lot of time on this to say that we would want to really encourage domestic food production. We know the challenges of water and other amenities that communities face, but let us help each other to produce food on our own. And then the need for focused investment and the establishment of agri-hubs where we can also shelve this the food that we will be producing. A bigger challenge is infant feeding promotion and the awareness in the provinces like the Western Cape and the Northern Cape, where we must engage the farmers, because these mostly are farm workers and some communities that stay there. That we know that there are substances that are available, readily available there, because it's the areas that produce those. But we would want to encourage that let's be conscious of our infants, because that's where stunting and wasting starts. And then we would want to have the full scale of implementation of these nutrition sensitive programs, because otherwise, if we continuously allow members even in our plans to say continue planting maize, communities know already how to plant maize. We don't even need to teach them that. But how do we go about, say, mix the maize, half vegetables, all kinds of vegetables, so that they can eat well? And then we are also, as Darrell, working on the National Food and Security Plan 2024-2029, which we are currently engaging on, to have a guideline and a blueprint that will help us to channel our efforts. Thank you very much, Program Director.